So here's a question I get all the time. Dr. Chris, why do some members of my sales team reach a certain level of production, come out of the gate strong, really ramp up beautifully, then they reach a certain level of production and they just level off? And quarter after quarter after quarter, they're just turning in the same level of production. What happened? I've seen them sell before. I know they have what it takes. What's going on? Interestingly, oftentimes during the same conversation, I'll ask them, so what do you look for in a sales candidate to determine whether they're going to be successful? And they'll say, well, Dr. Chris, we look for someone who has, say, a mortgage, a couple car payments, kids in school, all these external pressures that motivate this person. In my book and blogs, I refer to this phenomenon as the flatliner, the person who, again, gets up to one level of production and then they just level off. And it really comes down to that classic distinction at the end of the day. Can they sell versus will they sell? You see, there's a psychological phenomenon going to work here, and it's what we call the need for achievement. You see, when you hire someone that has a lot of external pressure on them, financial pressure, yes, they're under the gun. They want to do whatever they've got to do to relieve that pressure. But eventually, of course, that pressure will be relieved. And now they essentially know what they need to phone in, if you will, quarter after quarter just to maintain. And make no mistake, their production level is beautiful for them. They're doing just fine, just moseying along. Not so much for you, though. And that's where the frustration comes in on your side. Whereas when you have candidates who, again, are high in that need for achievement characteristic, you've got a different animal altogether. The salesperson who is high, again, in need for achievement is the person who's constantly focused on setting the bar high, jumping over that, then setting it even higher again the next time. They constantly want to produce excellence just for the sake of excellence. It's a very powerful motivator. And yes, they can be challenging sometimes to manage because they're constantly focused on just doing more and more and more. They are never satisfied. But that's the mentality that you want on your team. So the next question is obviously, how do you deal with this phenomenon? Two ways. Number one, of course, as you're bringing candidates on board, make sure you use an assessment that goes after that need for achievement, that drive characteristic, if you will, that leads to someone never being satisfied. But number two, also take a look at your current team. You're going to probably have a mix of individuals. And if you do have a few that are flatliners, you can also use the assessment to determine whether or not you can perhaps motivate them a bit, maybe in other roles. Maybe someone who's not necessarily knocking the cover off the ball as a hunter could do quite well as a farmer, or perhaps in a customer service role. So that's another powerful use of assessments, is determining how best to deploy your current team. So I have an offer for you. Directly below this video, there is a link, and it pertains to the drive test. It's my assessment. It's what I created for companies like yours to make sure that you are never hiring a bad salesperson again and never being satisfied with flatliners. Please click the link below to request a complimentary assessment. I think you'll find it very illuminating. You can give it to a current salesperson, you can give it to a candidate. I think you'll find the results in terms of both the person's overall level of drive as well as things that you can do to potentially mentor or motivate them. Again, very, very helpful. As I mentioned, over 1,000 companies around the world have used the drive test to make sure that they are only hiring high potential salespeople. What about you? I invite you to step up.